Scarlett is my name, a web designer who is 32 years old. I live in our family house, which used to be Caleb's childhood home, with my husband Caleb and his mother. I work for a corporation before getting married, but after the wedding, I chose to go independent and work from home as a web designer. The majority of my work comes from referrals from clients who loved my design from the company I used to work for. They didn't want to lose such a precious resource as me, so they kept sending me work. This arrangement is advantageous to both of us. I saved time commuting, and I also wanted to manage my domestic tasks correctly after marriage. This arrangement suits both my old employer and me. My live-in mother-in-law, on the other hand, doesn't seem to find it amusing that I'm working. She's traditional. Once married, it's natural for a wife to become a full-time homemaker and support her husband. It's not the same as it used to be. In most households, both partners are now employed. Caleb makes an attempt to satisfy her, but I'm the one who makes the money we rely on. She must do her housework properly. She responds clearly unconvinced. Is your wife making a lot of money from her home business? My mother-in-law doesn't seem to grasp what I do and always calls it a home business. I believe I am managing the housework well in between my work, but she is dissatisfied because my working style differs from the full-time housewife. And maybe I'm the evil woman who snatched her beautiful boy to her, who adores her only son. Since the beginning of our marriage, she has been making critical remarks to me. She appears to despise everything I do. Caleb told me that she has become more reliant on him since his father died roughly 5 years ago. He appears to be both irritated and happy that his mother wants him. Caleb's father bought our house in a residential neighborhood about 30 years ago. His life insurance paid off the remaining debt, and the house is now in the name of his mother. It's the perfect size for the 3 of us, and it even has a room for me to work in, which is quite convenient. My mother is 30 years old and appears to have many acquaintances in the neighborhood who come to visit her frequently. When her friends arrive, I have to stop what I'm doing to serve them tea and snacks. When these women her age get together, they frequently start discussing their problems with their daughters-in-law. My daughter-in-law always returns to her parents' house when there is a problem. She's only here for approximately half a year. My daughter-in-law blows money like it's water. My youngster is having difficulties. We even had bill collectors come to our house. It was dreadful. I can't help but chuckle when I listen to these talks from my office. They're all competing to see who has the worst in-law daughters. They never say anything nice about them. The daughter-in-law here is outstanding at juggling her job and household. My mother-in-law does not look happy when one of my friends compliments me. Her work isn't really impressive. It's similar to a little home business. I'm curious about how much she makes, she says deliberately loud enough for me to hear. Really, one friend stated, my daughter-in-law spends all of the money she earns from her part-time job on herself. Another buddy responded, the money my wife earns is hers, and the money her spouse earns is for the benefit of all of us. This caused everyone to burst out laughing. Things weren't like that back then, my mother-in-law said, starting with one of her favorite stories. I put on my headphones to block out her noise. I've heard these stories a million times, and I'm sick of them. Worst, they frequently belittle modern wives, and I can't tolerate listening. I tune out the outside noise and concentrate on my task. Caleb announced one day that he wanted to buy a new car. I've been considering purchasing a new vehicle. Is that all right? During supper, he casually inquired, why do you need your wife's approval to purchase a car? My mother-in-law exploded. Caleb hurriedly attempted to appease her. It is, after all, an automobile for all of us. I can't just make a decision on my own. Buying a car is a huge decision that should not be taken lightly. My mother-in-law, however, was not content and continued to dispute with him. You're the only one who has a driver's license, so go ahead and buy whatever car you want, she insisted. My poor husband, who typically follows his mother's orders, looked at me helpless. "You are free to make your choice," I said, extending a lifeline to him. "Don't always seek your wife's advice. Simply make your own decision." Caleb always double-checks everything with me or his mother. It's a good thing he's not selfish, but his indecision is annoying. My spouse never called me again after that. The man who adored me before our marriage is no longer present. I can only conclude that I was naive not to notice a husband who only listens to his mother-in-law. I felt better after telling my parents what transpired at my husband's place. "You do not have any children. It is preferable to divorce as soon as possible," my mother informed me, and I agreed. "I have a job, so that I am not inconvenienced in my life." My father assisted me in moving my possessions out of my husband's residence over the weekend. My husband was not to be found, and my mother-in-law never emerged from her room. I shouted in front of my husband's chamber, "Thank you so much for everything. Would you be willing to sign the divorce papers?" I slid the divorce papers behind the closed door. "I've already signed. Is this acceptable?" My husband's stern voice emerged from behind the door, along with the divorce papers. The way our marriage ended saddened me. I left my husband's house without saying anything to my mother-in-law. I had lived there for about 2 years, but I didn't have many fond recollections of it. I went straight to City Hall and filed for divorce. I was hoping to settle it quickly if it could be done on paper. I stayed at my parents' house after the divorce and continued working there. They asked me to please stay home for a while longer. It's far more secure than living alone. My father was likewise opposed to my living alone. "Caleb and his mother are odd. They might show up at your place." I didn't expect it, but being at home with my folks put me at ease because I can work from anywhere. I opted to stay at home for a bit. After roughly 2 months, I had virtually forgotten about my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. Who could it be if a call came in from an unknown number? Perhaps the number is incorrect. I didn't answer the phone because I was thinking that. However, the calls did not stop. I was surprised to hear my ex-husband's voice. "Why didn't you pick up the phone earlier?" He appeared agitated. "Well, it's an unknown number, and we're no longer related, so I'm going to end the call." Wait, I can't connect my smartphone," he said as I was about to hang up. "Why is this the case?" He sounded frantic. "I'm not sure." "Check with your telephone carrier," I replied. I realized something when I replied. "Is it possible that you are not depositing money into your bank account?" I was depositing money from my wage into the account for paying public utilities when we got married. His pay was also moved there, but it was insufficient because it was so small. He was selling health food, but his base wage was low due to the commission scheme. People who received a large number of orders appeared to make a lot of money, but he did not fare well because he was only earning the basic pay. Only a few hundred were deposited into the account at the end of each month. I would deposit money into the payment account, but that was merely his salary for the past 3 months. The disagreement over the automobile and my leaving the house occurred in the middle of the month. Payment for that new car may have already begun. On the other end of the phone, my ex-husband went silent. "I've been managing everything on my own," I told him. "You have to work it out on your own from now on." I wanted to say something, but I held back and hung up the phone. My ex-husband almost certainly never informed his mother how much he made. His mother had no idea until after our marriage. We'd been surviving primarily on my salary. Caleb was probably too embarrassed to acknowledge that he made less money than his wife. I've heard that services such as power and water are difficult to turn off. I discovered that the first thing to go is usually the cell phone service. The doorbell at my residence rang loudly a few days later on a calm weekend morning. My father answered the phone while arguing with someone at the front door. "We no longer need you, so please depart." When I saw my normally calm father so upset, I realized something was amiss, and my mother and I went to the front door. A voice yelled, "I just want to see Scarlett." Hearing my ex-wife's voice made my heart pound, just as my father had foretold. She traveled all the way to our house. When my ex-mother-in-law spotted me, she began shrieking at me with a terrified expression on her face. Because you ceased depositing funds into the account, the power and water were turned off. My parents and I were stunned. What did she mean? The power and water were turned off? My ex-husband arrived just then, anxiously attempting to intercede. "Stop it, Mom." My ex-mother-in-law shook Caleb's hand and started her tirade, which had nothing to do with me. "Caleb earns $5,000. Why would the power and water be turned off? You are incorrect." I corrected her, finally being able to express what I couldn't before. His father, my father-in-law, was the type of man who made his own decisions, and my mother-in-law frequently complained about it. Caleb believes that being too pushy is inappropriate after observing such interactions as a child. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, grew up with a domineering husband and believes that's how a spouse should be. Caleb's mother-in-law's displeasure with his incessant desire for approval is focused on me. Scarlett is constantly bothering Caleb. That's why he's turned out this way. She holds me responsible. I was stunned and didn't know what to say. Scarlett is constantly whining. That is why I am unable to make decisions on my own. Caleb chimed in, accusing me. But I remained silent. I tried to defend myself, but it was worthless. Caleb is always by his mother's side. We've been married for around 2 years, but he's never stood up for me in front of his mother. When she is not present, he apologizes, saying, "I'm sorry, but you are the most important to me." But I no longer have faith in him. He appeared to be kind to me at first, but he never spoke up for me. I'm beginning to wonder if I should reassess our relationship. I'm concerned about my ability to continue living with Caleb. Kindness and indecision are not the same thing. I wish he would confront his mother. Caleb's new car arrived about a month later. The nicest smell is that of a new automobile. "Let's all go on a drive on my next day off," he joked. His joy was contagious, and even my mother-in-law appeared pleased. "That's a nice vehicle. It had to be pricey, right? But that's okay because it's deductive from your pay, right?" My husband did not answer her inquiry. Instead, he said, "I'm having fun messing with various aspects of the car." I was taken aback when I saw that expensive-looking new automobile. There is, without a doubt, a limit. Despite the fact that I told him he could do whatever he wanted, my spouse walked into the house beaming. I challenged him. What was the price of that car? He responded casually, $60,000. Seeing my stunned expression, my husband said, "But you said I could buy any car I wanted, didn't you?" My mother-in-law swiftly sided with my husband. "That's right. He delegated it to Caleb, so don't want now." At the time, I did leave everything up to him, but I also wanted him to consider our financial condition. Where does that type of cash come from? I inquired of my spouse, ignoring my mother-in-law's remark. He stammered, "Well, I'm paying with a loan." "Scarlett, don't whine," my mother-in-law said in his place. "You are not the one who is paying," I retorted. I'm not sure if she was upset because I ignored her, possibly due to her disapproval of my remark to my spouse. She directed a critical glance in my direction. "You're a grumpy daughter-in-law, always grumbling about something, despite the fact that you live on Caleb's paycheck," my mother-in-law responded in an unusually harsh tone. "I too have a job," I said. My mother-in-law did not remain mute. "What are you on about with your part-time employment? You're not making much money. Caleb earns $5,000 every month." She mocked me by looking down on me. "That's my wage." I was about to remark, but when I went to find my husband, he had gone into his room. "I've been patient up until now, but I've had enough. I want someone like you to go as soon as possible." My mother-in-law actually said that. I too had been patient. I didn't want to talk about my pay. It appeared absurd, and I no longer cared. My mother-in-law's remark irritated me, but my husband's demeanor astounded me. Wasn't it my spouse who started this fight in the first place? His customary indecision had surfaced once more. "Okay, then I'll leave," I said as I went to my home office and collected my laptop and other necessities, then left the house. I'll return later for the remainder of my belongings, I told my mother-in-law, who was staring at me with a terrified expression. My spouse stayed confined to his room. Make sure you've signed the divorce papers the next time you come here. My still irritated mother-in-law yelled at me. Did you hear what I said, you useless lady? It was the first time I had heard my mother-in-law use such foul language, and I was taken aback. I blew her off and rushed out of my in-law's house. Was she upset because I said I'd leave when she requested, or because I questioned my husband about the money? In any case, I needed to get out of this house as quickly as possible. I returned to my parents' house for the time being after storming out of my husband's parents' house. What caused this rapid change? My mother was taken aback. I'm not sure what happened, but you are welcome to remain as long as you need. My father appeared to understand the situation based on my strange expression. My ex-wife's ex-husband appeared astonished at my statements, then turned to Caleb. That's correct, it was not my pay, he conceded, his shoulders dropping. That it was all Scarlett's fault, huh? How do you make so much money with a part-time job? My ex-wife's mother-in-law gazed at me as if I were a fox who had duped her. As I previously stated, this is not a part-time job, I said. It's a real job. My ex-mother-in-law's face had lost its color. She inquired about Caleb's salary. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He said it was about $500 net. His voice was almost silent. There was a brief silence. Then my ex-wife mentioned something astonishing. Can't you come back, Scarlett? The whole notion of leaving us was a joke. With a low posture, she begged. It reminded me of someone attempting to butter me up. What are you on about? I'm no longer married. I no longer have anything to do with you two. Despite my clear refusal, my ex-mother-in-law proceeded to appeal in a too familiar manner. Caleb, you may simply rem. It will be fine if we begin the papers right away. When I was too stunned to answer, my father stepped in. We've had enough of you. We'll contact the cops if you don't leave right away. At the sound of my father's commanding voice, my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law left quickly. If you show up again, I'm going to contact the cops. As the mother and boy wobbled away, my father issued a final warning. What a scumbag bunch of folks. My mother was stunned, but my father appeared even more enraged. Scarlett, I'm delighted you got out of that marriage. One of Caleb's buddies gave me an update on the X family a while after that occurred. Caleb eventually sold his family's home and land and moved into an apartment with his mother. The new car he scarcely used had also been sold, and the funds from the land sale had been used to pay off the outstanding loan. Caleb had paid off his obligations, but instead of getting back to work, he had spent all of his money on gaming. He vanished without a trace after squandering the proceeds from the sale of his family's home. His mother, who had been left behind, had developed dementia and had been admitted to a nursing home. I'm doing well at work and living alone now. I've recently begun dating a man I met at work. He understands that I am divorced and is highly committed to his profession. He's not the type of guy who relies on his wife's money to make large expenditures, as Caleb did. We haven't gotten engaged yet, but we both think we could marry each other.